I would like to talk about lesson preparation in Chapter 2 in SIOP. First, it's important to remember that you need all your materials there. Your guide, your academic guide, if your district or your state has a guide for history and objectives or science, whatever. I'm talking content class here, basically. Uh, by the way, SIOP is kind of more of a sheltered workshop format. Um, which is very useful for many ESL students. It means they get their material, their content with the language. So they're trying to learn English as they're learning history or science or art, whatever. Chapter 2 in the text, and also the Nebraska ELL guide that I have here on the assignment sheet. I would like you to open that up and look, and there you can look on pages, I think 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And they give you examples of how you can scaffold or think about how your material needs to be reorganized in order to make it more comprehensible for English language learners. Obviously, when I'm talking about this, we're talking sheltered, which is what SIOP is, which means you're not just doing a newcomer class. It's more of a content area like science or even English or history class, whatever, geography class. And so you look at the material and you try to think, what is some of the vocabulary that students may already know? If you're teaching geography, you know that mesa is the word table in Spanish, and that's what a mesa is. It's like a tabletop. Volcano. Sometimes it's useful to have students look up the word in their own language so they know. I think that's really useful when you have a student that is very advanced academically but doesn't know a lot of English. They just need some kind of hint about where they are in the material, and then they can grasp the concept. Saves a lot of time. You don't want to spend time trying to pretend this is a volcano, boom, boom, and stuff like that, when the student could just look it up. When you sit down to do the lesson preparation, and they have this on the SIOP chapter video, watch the chapter on lesson preparation, is they show the teacher sitting down, bouncing ideas off another teacher. The particular example they use there about dropping the atomic bomb and trying to relate that to the kids, it's a little bit about the next chapter, building background. But it's kind of a little strange. I wasn't a big fan of that. So I would give you the example of, if I'm sitting down, I'm going to teach about Nebraska history, and some of the concepts I'm going to bring up are the Oregon Trail and Sioux Lookout, which is over a place on a hill, or whatever you want to call a large, tall area near North Platte. These concepts mean nothing if you're outside Nebraska. And Oregon Trail only makes sense if you're fairly well schooled in American history. And if you're from Canada or Australia and you speak English, you still wouldn't know what Oregon Trail means unless you played the game. So you have to look at, what is it the students probably know? How do I clue them into it? I'm not telling you anything that you would normally probably go through in teaching a class, relating new material to students. But I like the SIOP because in the lesson preparation, it puts great emphasis on taking the time to do the lesson well and to think it through and have either manipulatives or photos or pictures or video or, multimedia. It talks about this on page 33. Literature. I like books about the material. If you're going to talk about Oregon Trail, maybe you have books about the Oregon Trail. Photos, some old cowboy films that wouldn't be legit because the Oregon Trail was well before the invention of, certainly before the invention of movies, motion picture camera, although they did have photos in those days, a few. So the idea with if you want to teach the Oregon Trail, is you try to make it very concrete to students. You tell them, well, this is where it is, this is where it went. Maybe you could go on a field trip. Say, there's a rut from one of the wheels. I've never seen those places, but I hear they exist in western Nebraska. They usually see the ruts because for some reason, they went through a place where nobody else would ever go through. So you can actually see the impact of mankind's imprint there on the land. Might want to have graphic organizers, talks about things like that. Adapted text. I think sometimes it's okay to have it in Spanish. If you could find a Nebraska book written in Spanish, and you have a high-level student, that's the answer, who could grasp a lot of the things quick, it'd be useful. You don't go through and teach everything in Spanish unless it's a dual language school. We usually have to have that. Welcome pages 36, 37 about jigsaw reading, marginal notes, leveled reading guide. These should be familiar to you anyhow, especially if you're an element teacher. You want then you want to just marshal and get all together your material so you're ready to teach. Then the next thing is go and look at these sample lesson plans, which are not presented on videotape. Well, there's a little bit, but not as much. These are in the book. They go through, and they one on the gold rush, and one on gold. Maybe they all on the gold rush. Should I have a look and see what their sequences are? Yeah, the gold rush and some other video or some other examples of lessons, and then they do a critique. And those are useful. It is reading. It's not quite as interesting as watching a lesson having a critique. I think it would be useful for you. Now, there's some other things that are important, I think, Chapter 2. And I have a little video on it, but I'm just going to introduce. I've got a whole series on multicultural literature from 804 class, some of you take. But I have a section on dictionary. And ESL, you can have long ones as a company of dictionaries. I think they do both British and American English, kind of interesting. I can't remember if Pearson, as you know, Pearson's bought everything, except for maybe the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's probably the only thing they don't control yet. But this is a useful dictionary, because 2,000 words is all you have to know. Obviously, 2,000 different words in order to understand the definitions here. So I'll try to make the definition simple enough that most people can, you don't have to be an advanced reader to understand some of the dictionaries. If you open some unabridged dictionaries, large ones, they've got some different words that you could read the definition and not know it. Here, like hyperbole, a way of describing something by saying that it is much bigger, smaller, or heavier than it really is. Simple way of just describing. It's exaggerated, but they didn't say that. This is very useful. Now, I'm a great believer in picture dictionaries. And if you go into different companies' site, you can actually get posters showing downtown. It shows sidewalks and people selling coffee and different types of and different types of vehicles on the street. This is really, really useful stuff, I think. It really helps. So that's a cool way in visualizing it. It's so interesting because kids can look at it and they can take those home or dictionary like that, and their parents can learn from those. So I just share this information about lesson preparation. I think it's very critical, and I don't go through the whole SIOP and make such a big deal about every chapter. But lesson preparation and the next one on building ground are huge. They're huge, as the other ones are repetition, practice, and types of lesson plans. And we will talk about that. And you will prepare lesson plans in class. But getting started correctly makes the whole thing having your materials. I've got a lot of really cool materials from a grant we had 15 years ago. We've got boxes of materials, and some of them have rocks in them, different types of rocks, like samples of different types of coal and different types of rocks that are found in the ground in the Midwest. And then I have another that has acrylic, and it has scorpions in it, and an Australian spider, the funnel web spider, which has been about that long, just scary to look at. It's really just a big paperweight, but it's just spooky to look at. You look at a big spider, and I noticed this, I could take and put it in the sink, and then you don't see the plaque around it. It looks like there's big old spider sitting in sink in some water. And that creeps people out. I like to play jokes. Well, I hope this has been helpful, and I want you to watch that thing with Teresa Ritta because I think that's helpful too. Okay, now I'll see if I can get this on here. Hopefully it'll work. Email me with any questions.